How does, okay, so, right, so someone is a US person. So again, as we mentioned earlier, if it is that you are a US person by virtue of substantial presence, so you spend a certain amount of time in the US, so that under Section 7701, you should get substantial presence or the green card test. So you do have a green card, you're a lawful permanent resident of the US, or you're a US citizen. You're subject to tax on your worldwide income, and just by virtue of just hopping on a plane and leaving, that doesn't mean that you've severed tax residency. The only way of severing tax residency is if you surrender your passport, and we have 3 or 4 clients every month surrender a US passport or green card. So it's something that happens, but we have way more enter the US. So, go figure. So surrender that passport properly to a competent authority, surrender that green card. And again, just because your green card expired doesn't mean that you cease to be a resident. We get that all the time. Even if your green card expires, you may still be a lawful permanent resident in the US unless you've surrendered it. You've taken credible steps to surrender to a competent authority, right? However, if it is that you triggered tax residence under substantial presence, you spend more than a certain number of days in the US, and the calculation is a bit more complex than most, in that it's not just what's happening in this present year, but there's a look back period of a couple of years as well. But once it is that you are outside of the number of days in the US is below the threshold, and you're not, you spend a certain amount of time outside and you're no longer a resident tax resident in the US, then you're fine. So that's one way you can get out. If you were tax resident under substantial presence, just leave and stay out, you're fine. Other than that, you need to give up your passport or green card. But regardless, you are tax resident. Someone is asking, what are the implications of opening a foreign company? And again, some people are under the impression that, hey, you just jump in a plane, you move to Dubai, or you just land in Dubai and you run to the nearest free zone and you open a company, and everything that company does is magically tax-free from day one to the US. Spoiler, no, that's not how it works. Unfortunately, no. There are quite a number of rules that are basically anti-deferral rules, that because if it were the case, everybody would do it, right? Just open a foreign company and that company does its thing and it'll be tax free to the US unless or until there's some sort of distribution, right? So it doesn't exactly work that. If it is that you control that company, or you together with other US exposed persons, the US persons as previously defined, you guys combine and you run a company, or you have shares in that company is considered a CFC, or controlled foreign corp. The US is not the only jurisdiction to have CFC rules. I mean, many developed jurisdictions, developed markets, they have CFC or controlled foreign corp rules. But from a US point of view, the CFC rules mean that there will be, let's say, distributions, even though the company doesn't pay you whatever, it retains the profit and it doesn't pay it out to you either as a dividend or doesn't pay it out as a salary or bonus or dividend or whatever. That doesn't mean that you're tax free. There'll be deemed distributions under something called GILTI, which came into existence in 2017 under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and in 2017, I think it was. What else is there? There are also PFIC rules, and this will apply to even companies that are not CFCs as well. You need to have a look and see whether it applies to PFIC rules. And the PFIC rules, I think those came in the 1980s under President Reagan. And then you also have Subpart F, which I think dates back to the 1950s and 1960s, I think it is. So the point is, these are all anti-deferral rules. The IRS, regardless of what people think and people say, they're pretty smart, and the US tax regs and regulations, the rules, the procedures are pretty comprehensive. So it's probably worth having a conversation with a qualified tax advisor before, you make certain steps. Chances are, if you think you've figured out a loophole, or these loopholes or these hacks that people promote on various places online, just have a look and consider it with someone who's US qualified, just to make sure that the effect is what you're looking for. Because again, the consequences for non-compliance can be pretty aggressive from a US point of view. When it comes to international tax rules with the United States, it's a bit counterintuitive. You think that the emphasis is on revenue collection. Not really. The emphasis is on reporting. And we know that because the penalties for, let's say you don't pay taxes, yes, you may get some underpayment penalties or whatever. And, there's interest that would accrue, but the penalties for not reporting foreign bank accounts, for not reporting foreign entities, foreign gifts and stuff like that, it could be pretty aggressive from, in terms of the civil penalties. It can be pretty draconian, and it could also be criminal penalties as well. You can go to jail. So, nobody wants to go to jail. So if it is that you are being advised to set up, as a US person, to set up a company outside of the US, just make sure that you speak with an advisor, someone with skin in the game, because, often you have these advisors pitching structures, but they have no skin in the game. If it is that it doesn't do what they claim it does, you have no recourse because they have no license. They're not, they have no license, they have no professional liability insurance. They're just trying to sell your product, right? And as we mentioned earlier, and we mention all the time, one size does not fit all. You need to get someone who sits and listens to you to understand what works in your unique circumstances. And I hope that helps keep you out of trouble, keep you out of jail, right?
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.